Okay, hello, good evening, and welcome. Well, good evening, it's good lunchtime. I'm David Wood from the Pacific Science Center, and it's my pleasure to host tonight's virtual Meet a Scientist. Before we meet today's scientists, I'd like to remind everyone that educational program like this is made possible in part thanks to the generous support of donors. In the face of challenges like COVID-19 and climate change, science and an informed public are absolutely essential. So to ensure curiosity never closes, or for more information about donating to the Pacific Science Center, visit PacSci.org/support. So the scientists that we're going to be meeting today are members of PacSci's Science Communication Fellowship Program, which offers training and support for local STEM professionals and connects their work to public audiences. Typically, Science Communication Fellows deliver hands-on activities at our Meet a Scientist event that happens twice a month on Saturdays at PacSci. For obvious reasons, our doors are currently closed to the public, but we still wanted to provide the opportunity for you to meet and connect with some of the fantastic local scientists who have committed themselves to science communication. Today, our Science Communication Fellows are going to be discussing their experiences as scientists, but they're also going to be discussing their experiences as regular folks as well. We've got a few questions planned, but this conversation may go in all sorts of weird and wonderful directions. If you have a question, a comment, a story, anything that you would like to share with us and the scientists today, perhaps you are early in your career, or perhaps you're thinking about becoming a scientist, perhaps you're curious about some of the work that these scientists do, or perhaps you yourself are a scientist and something that we've discussed today resonates with you and you want to share your experiences. We welcome anything and everything in the YouTube comment section, so please leave all of that in that comment section. So without further ado, please welcome our first scientist to the live stream, Ashlee Abrantes. She's a graduate student in the College of the, hey Ashlee, she's a graduate student in the College of the Environment at the University of Washington. Welcome, Ashlee.
Hi, David.
Hey, we have Dr. David Ung, who's a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Chemistry at the University of Washington. Hi, David, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Awesome. And finally, Dr. Sunny Rao, who is a senior data scientist at Civis Analytics. Hey, we're all here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Well, I'm going to kick things off with our first question. Sunny, I'm going to start with you, and we'll each answer this briefly within around a minute. Just tell everybody what it is that you do in STEM.
So I am a senior data scientist at Civis Analytics, like you mentioned. So what I work on is kind of this problem of how we can help local governments use the data that they have to make better data-driven decisions, so that the policies that they're enacting or the programs that they're working on are better serving the communities that they're there to serve. So that's the brief synopsis. I'm sure we can get into it a little bit more later.
We definitely will. David, how about yourself?
Yeah, I guess I'm a chemist. I recently earned my PhD at the University of Washington, and my research really focused on developing nanomaterials for energy storage. But what that really means on the day-to-day is that I mix stuff together and then I test them to see how we can use them for energy applications.
Very cool. Ashlee, how about you?
So I pretty much play in water and catch bugs.
Play in water, catch bugs?
Yeah. I'm a conservation geneticist. So I use water, primarily fresh water, and certain groups of insects, and it helps us gauge water quality. I've done that here in Washington, and my new project is going to be starting up in Puerto Rico whenever it can. And and aside from that, the thing that pays the bills is teaching. Right now I'm teaching statistics, and I'm also a technical writer.
Awesome. Well, thank you all once again for joining us and doing this and sharing your work and experiences with everybody today. So this is what you do currently. But what was your first ever job? Whether it was serious or unserious, whatever it was. Mine was, I taught swimming lessons in high school. I'm not a terribly good swimmer, but I was good enough, I suppose, to teach little kiddos how to do it. Sunny, how about yourself? Can you remember what your first job was?
Yeah, my first job was actually as a basketball referee at the local basketball league, which was a terrible job for me because one, I am a super mediocre basketball player. I'm very, very average, if that. And also I wasn't very good at enforcing the rules. So it basically ended up a lot of times with a lot of like very angry parents screaming at me. So that did not last very long.
Okay, so a short-lived basketball referee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Quite the transition. David, how about yourself? What was your first job?
I've actually had the very unique and fortunate experience where I've only ever been paid to do chemistry research. So when I was in high school, and I wanted to get a summer job, my parents were pretty adamant that just sort of having more education was going to be sort of more beneficial. So like, I think when a lot of my friends were doing, summer jobs in high school, I was taking like community college classes or whatever. And so my first like real job was when I was in college, working in a research lab, and that's sort of continued now, which is a very bizarre experience, actually.
In a complete contrast, my first job was at like 9 or 10. I was delivering newspapers, so which really stunk when you're somebody who is very much a night owl and had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and turn your hands black from rubber banding or bagging or whatever the day called for, and got out there and trucked around. It seemed like miles, but it was really only like probably 3 or 4 blocks around my town, and chuck newspapers at people's doors. So rewarding work.
What was the local newspaper? Where was this?
In very northern New York.
Okay.
The Courier Observer. I imagine it's still being printed.
It might be online.
Oh, for sure.
Well, great. So someone's asking if there is a spider on someone's wall. That's the first question we've gotten. I don't know.
I hope not.
I could put one there.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but keep those questions coming in, though. We love it. We'll try and track down whichever spider it was. Maybe Ashlee's insect collection has escaped. So obviously everybody started off with their first jobs, some serious, some less serious, and then you've gotten to where you are today. What was it that inspired you all to pursue a career in science? What was it about science? Was it a person, a thing? What was it that kind of sparked that curiosity and to become a scientist?
I can answer that question first. I think for me, I've always kind of had an interest in science, but it wasn't really something I considered as something I wanted to pursue as a career. For me, what really changed that was I did my undergrad at UCLA, and I think the first physics class I took there, I had an amazing professor who kind of just took me under his wing and was like, you know what, you're kind of good at this and you should maybe try it out a little bit. Maybe consider majoring in this subject. And I took his advice seriously, and it helped that after that class, I think I took physics in high school and just had no idea, honestly, what was happening. I kind of just was plugging in numbers to formulas and didn't understand it at all. And that class really made it click for me. And I think that mentorship, having that in college, really helped me kind of make that transition.
David, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think similar to Sunny, I had a really great teacher that I think really shifted my career trajectory. When I was younger, I was really, really against science. It was my worst subject. And I think I got like a D in 7th grade science. And I wanted to go to film school. But when I was in high school, I had a really great chemistry teacher, Mr. Michael Morgan. I guess the way he approached teaching the class was less, memorization, and was really trying to teach the background, and like sort of understanding the concepts. And I think once I sort of learned the language of chemistry, I found it really fascinating, and that's sort of what guided me here. So yeah, Mr. Morgan had a pretty significant impact on that.
So if there are any 7th graders watching, you can turn it around. David just got his PhD recently. Congrats, by the way. Anthony,
Thank you.
We got a few recent PhD recipients. So that's amazing. Ashlee, how about yourself? Can you remember what kind of sparked that interest in science for you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I had a ton of great mentors, but way further back, I was very much a pain in the butt child. I was the kid that was always going, why? Like the cliche kid that goes, why is the sky blue? Well, because it is. No, that's not a good enough answer. And I grew up kind of in a rural area, and the woods were in my backyard constantly. So I was always trying to figure out what things were and what, and how things worked. And my dad is an electrician, and that always fascinated me too. Like there's, okay, you do that. And then it's just putting things together, and it kind of, it's, the route was not direct, but that was asking questions was always in the background, and always has been, and how the world works, why the water flows, why our body does this, you name it. It's just curious to me.
So you've always been a curious person. Was there someone who was influential in kind of maybe channeling that curiosity and that energy?
Yes and no. Like I had fantastic teachers. The first one that jumps out is my 8th grade earth science teacher, and he's a fantastic person in general. But some of the ways he taught, he went back to school to get his teaching degree after, like I'm getting my PhD after having done other things. And he was so relatable, and you could tell that he was really invested in the students. And I to this day, and this was like like many years ago, remember him. He was like teaching a lesson about force or something. He just laid on the lab bench, and he put like a log on his chest and let kids whack him with a sledgehammer, like a real sledgehammer, not like some rubber mallet thing. And I remember one of the guys in my class was, 8th grade, but he regularly chopped wood at home because where we lived and stuff. I remember Mike Ashlee being like, I was nervous. I was afraid that kid, because he was just trying to, demonstrate how, things are displaced. And the look on his, everybody else, he's fine. And then all of a sudden you see this nervousness. I just remember that. And like how he went to the next level to make sure that he, got the material across. And here I am 8 million years later, still remembering that lesson. So I'd say he was probably one of the first specific science teachers that had a huge effect on how I perceive the world.
That's really cool. I feel like it's a really good example of how the teachers that you have make such a big difference in your life. I think the best teachers that I had were like history and English teachers in grade school. And so when I got to college, I really thought that I was going to study like philosophy or history, and that just changes so dramatically based on the teachers and experiences you have. So it's really interesting.
Did you actually start out with like a more of a social science background when you started in college, or?
So I had no idea what I wanted to major in. I actually only applied to places that would let me put undeclared on the application because I had no idea what I wanted to study. It took me like 2.5 years, I think, to declare a major, as I think my undergrad major was in biophysics, but it took me a while to get there. I took a lot of history classes, a lot of like, I think just random philosophy classes and stuff that I was interested in until I like finally took that physics class and was like, yes, this is it. So, yeah.
Gosh, yeah. Shout out to all the science teachers out there doing just crazy stuff to inspire kids and spark that curiosity in everyone. David, I got a question. How might someone not in your field, especially with chemistry, how might someone in your field interact or encounter the focus of your work? Like in the real world, where might someone encounter some of the work that you're doing?
So the lab I work in at the University of Washington, so it's the CASART lab, we specialize in nanomaterials. And so I specifically work in energy applications, which I think is a little more abstract. But a lot of my colleagues work with other nanomaterials called quantum dots. And what these particles are really good at is they're really good at absorbing one color of light and then re-emitting a different color. And so because of this, they're actually used in a lot of display applications. So if you've ever seen a QLED TV at like Costco or Best Buy or whatever, the Q in QLED stands for quantum dots. And so they're, I think, a really sort of popular technology because by sort of emitting these specific colors, you get really, I think the like buzzword is high color purity. But yeah, that's maybe the best example I have of that.
Very cool. So if someone's at home watching this on a QLED TV, yeah, then hopefully they're seeing this vivid green in a slightly vivider color, thanks to the work of David's colleagues. Sunny, how about yourself? How might someone interact? You spoke about data analytics as that relates to local governments and civil service. Mm-hmm. What's some of the application of that work that someone might interact with? How does that translate to folks' everyday lives?
Yeah, one thing that immediately comes to mind is a project that we're working on, which is working with a lot of clients on the 2020 census, which I kind of think a lot of people have forgotten is happening with all of the other crazy things that are going on. But the census is hugely important to people's daily lives. Can
you explain why briefly?
Yeah. So there's I think there's kind of two perspectives on this. One is from like the scientist's point of view, like the census is like the ground truth of like data that we get about people that are living in the US, because it's not a survey, it's literally counting every single person that lives in the country and getting data about them. So all of like the models and stuff that people build are based off of this data. So it's hugely important that we actually do get to count everybody. And the other thing that's really important is that a lot of kind of funding gets allocated based on the number of people and the populations that are in different communities. So a lot of like your community centers, community programs get funded that way. Legislative districts also get apportioned based off of the census. So it is hugely important that people fill this out. And so one of the things that we're working on is trying to figure out how to target people that that are maybe harder to count populations to get them to participate in the census more, because these are often the types of people that are more heavily impacted if they don't get counted. So that's the first thing I thought of that's a direct impact of the work that I do.
Well, yeah, certainly the census is important for everyone to take.
Yeah, so everybody watching, fill out your census if you haven't already.
And how does your work specifically tie into that?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of local government clients on how they can better direct their outreach programs. So a lot of that now, the census had an entire plan of like literally knocking on people's doors that haven't filled it out. And obviously that's not really possible now. So like people really have to drastically pivot how they're targeting people to fill out the census. So figuring out kind of how to allocate resources and whether these interventions are working or not and how to continue doing them kind of in a using more of like a scientific method to make sure that things are effective.
That's awesome. Ashlee, how about yourself? How does your work impact people in some of their daily lives, or what impacts does it have on the public?
Well, if you don't mind me asking, Sunny, what are you drinking?
It's an oolong tea.
Okay, so water. My focus really is on fresh water and non-invasive ways of assessing its quality without having to do things that are going to destroy it more, preserve it. And yeah, I started working on that here in one of the watersheds right here in Seattle. So, and that's why my next focus is in Puerto Rico, because whether people know or not, after the hurricanes, they went an excessive amount of time without any fresh water. And it could have taken really a very small crew to go in there and do some basic assessments. And I'm trying to innovate some of the ways we use things in the water, like environmental DNA and things like that, to do that without people having to go through maybe so many bureaucratic, leaps to, because I think water is one of those things, kind of like basic human right things that people should always have access to if they can. So
Is this like, so I'm just curious about how this works. Is this like you look at the DNA in the water to see if maybe there's like bacteria that's in it, or viruses that shouldn't be there? Is that the...
Yeah, lots of things actually. I focus on invertebrates, a lot of insects, because they can tell us things like pollution presence or absence, and then you can filter out bacterial DNA, things like that. Some insects that can tell you how much like fecal coliform, like human or animal poop is in the water. And these, like those in particular, are things you really want to know if it's something you're going to drink. So yeah, I just extract the DNA and let them do the rest.
That's fascinating. So how do bugs do that? Is it, what are you looking at to tell you how much poop is in the water?
There are different ways, because there are actually direct tests on how you can actually directly test water for, and I'm really sorry about my son, it's nap time. There are ways you can test the water for certain parts of poop, and then there are also insects that, like I said, correlate to that. Because every organism sloughs off cells, and or excretes things, or just dies, and they break down, and their DNA breaks down, and it ends up in the air, it ends up in the water, it ends up in the soil, and we're able to capture that now. And instead of having full organisms or a pile of poop, as it were, we can pull that information out of the water. That's
cool. Do you use like high throughput sequencing methods to do that kind of research?
Yeah. Yep. That allows us to, that way I can just filter for DNA or RNA straight up, and put it through the sequencer, and then whatever organism is, it picks up is in there. So it's really a perk. So there's the really practical application, and then there's the biodiversity environmental side, where we can pick up, oh, this species has never been here before. We've got this invasive species we need to watch out for, or things along those lines.
Is that kind of how it ties into the conservation part? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. That's neat.
We've got a few interesting invasive species showing up around our shores in the Pacific Northwest. I know we've got a murder hornet Science in the City talk coming up on June the 2nd. That's my plug. I've gotten it in there. We're getting some really good questions from our online folks. And so, David, I'm going to start with you with this one. What's one of the coolest experiments you've ever done? Were you in a cool location? Was it testing something unusual? Have you ever done a really like memorable experiment for one reason or another?
I don't have a specific experiment that jumps out to me. But every now and then, when I am working in the lab and I'm making these nanomaterials, it does, if I sit down and I think about it too long, it does kind of blow my mind that any of this works. right? That like I'm able to sort of precisely move these atoms and molecules around the way I want them to. And so it's sort of like playing with Legos that you can't see, right? And the fact that that works at all and that I have any control over that is super cool. So not a specific experiment, but I guess sort of the work in general.
Very cool. Ashlee, have you been, I mean, you're testing water quality. You're hoping to go to Puerto Rico soon. Have you ever done any experiments or been in any locations that were particularly memorable? Maybe they were really bad water quality, or was you in a great place?
You know, that's a toss-up. Okay, so water-wise, it wasn't even that I've done work there. I worked there on water. I was doing a bird survey in Indonesia, and that's tied with my work in Brazil. When I think about Brazil, okay, everybody thinks about the Amazon, and there are two rivers that go through the Amazon, or like through Manaus, which is like one of the biggest cities on the Amazon. And I went skydiving while I was there. And the thing I remember before getting out of the plane was the guy whispered in my ear, there are two rivers. One of them's black, one of them's yellow. Aim for the black one. And why does that stick out in my mind? Because it's so polluted. The actual river, the Amazon itself, is like yellow in some. You don't see that in a lot of pictures when people are kind of looking to do touristy things in the tropical rainforest. And yeah, so that stuck out to me. That one phrase stuck out to me on the water quality of the whole reason why I was down there, more than actually just doing the going and sampling and pipetting and things like that. So
definitely a completely different perspective skydiving over the Amazon than testing water quality down.
Yeah, but it's a very terrifying thing to have that whispered in your ear no matter what. Like if the chute fails, shoot for that river. Yeah.
Yeah, the less dirty river. So how about yourself, Sunny? Were there any experiments that you've done that have been particularly memorable? Or any projects you've worked on?
I mean, the immediate thing that comes to mind is just like when things work in general. That's pretty memorable. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't work, and spent a lot of time kind of troubleshooting it and trying to figure out. I feel like this was a description of my entire grad school experience was nothing works. How do I fix it? So yeah, anytime something works, it's very exciting.
Have there ever been any particularly memorable science fails or experiments gone awry?
I mean, I feel like it's always, well, sometimes it's big mistakes, but it's often just very small mistakes that I make that are very preventable. Like I accidentally added in grad school would be like, somebody that I was working with accidentally added, or maybe it was me, added the wrong reagent to the tube, and now the experiment is broken, but we didn't realize that happened because you're pipetting like a bunch of clear liquids around, and it's kind of hard to know after the fact because you're just looking at a clear tube. So, I mean, luckily nothing like super disastrous has happened. Everything has been pretty fixable, but it's always like mistakes where you look back on it and you're like, okay, that wasn't like the best thing. That probably was preventable if I was a little more organized or something. But yeah.
Sonny, did you have a project when you started grad school? Did you come in like, this is what I'm going to do?
No, not at all. I was like very interested in the like synthetic biology realm when I started grad school, because I like came from a biophysics background and I was very interested in like the stuff people were doing. But it took me a little while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do in that realm, which I don't feel like is atypical. There are definitely a couple people that I've met that are just on top of it. And they're like, I know what I want to do. This is what I'm doing for grad school. I have my whole project mapped out, and they're in and out in like 4 years. And that's not what I did at all.
I had a question that asks just that. there is so much overlap between fields. How do you narrow down what you major in, like the different parts of engineering or science, and what minor is most helpful? So for you all, maybe David, how did you kind of whittle down? It sounds like you've been in chemistry for a while.
Yeah.
But sure, chemistry is one branch of science, but then how did you whittle down what you wanted to do even within chemistry? And did you have any minors?
So I didn't have any minors in college. So I've been sort of a chemistry major in college, and then in graduate school, focused on chemistry as well. But my point of view has always been that like you can learn how to like appreciate any kind of research once you've put in enough time to learn about it. And so I kind of think that like once you have spent X hours learning and kind of grow familiarity, you can sort of learn to enjoy and continue that kind of science. When I was in college, the research lab I was able to join was a inorganic chemistry lab. So they work with a lot of metal reagents and chemistry. And so I think once I got that background, I found it interesting, and I enjoyed the energy applications, and that's sort of what guided my direction in graduate school. But sort of my perspective of the sort of chemistry research field in general is that it's becoming a lot more interdisciplinary in general, right? Just in the lab I work in, we've collaborated with people in physics, in chemical engineering, in material science and engineering, I think some biology as well. And so I don't think I really answered the question actually, but find something you're interested in, and I think that's sort of good enough, really.
Yeah, it sounds like putting in the time, cross collaborate, learn from others. Yeah. Ashlee, how about yourself? How did you narrow down what it is that you wanted to do? Did you have any minors?
No, I actually I have undergraduate degrees in history and biology, so no, not at all. I had a huge gap before I went back to school, because I thought I was gonna be a doctor when apply to medical school, all that, and went, nope, this isn't for me. And so it took a while. It took a lot of experiences. So I like narrowed it down, and then it actually took getting my master's to help me whittle it down further. And the biggest, I learned a lot of things in applying and like digging, and yeah, there are certain people pick things like, do you want to go to a certain school? Do you want to work in a certain, is it more important that you work in a certain area? Like it was important to me where I worked and the kind of people I worked in. So I'm like stretched across like different parts of the campus. I think the thing I didn't realize about graduate school was it's like, because undergrads have this like grade. You need that 4.0 for everything. And when you get to graduate school, it's like you want to be there. It's not about the grade. It's not about the class. You need to acquire the knowledge, whether you're doing it in a classroom or from a PI or whoever. And like the important thing to me was like building my committee for my dissertation. I have this person who specializes in genetics. I have this person who specializes in entomology. I have this person who specializes in metacoding in different geographies, and I just have making sure that you have enough brains around you at any given time to pick from. So like and none of them care what my undergraduate degree was in. I think they care at the beginning what my GPA was, just to say like, hey, I'm here to work. But in general, I think when talking to them after the fact, after like acceptances and going on lots of interviews and all that good stuff, people more like, they want to know that you want to be there more than that you had a 4.0. They want to know that you're interested in the topic, that you're interested in the project, and you just need to get out there and like talk to people and read things and read things and read things, and then write a little bit and read some more, and then read some more, and then I think you're ready for graduate school. It's not, did I get a 4.0 in Orgo? Did did I nail that biochem exam? And, you know, did I make calculus look like it was chump change? So don't focus on your degree, on the title on your degree. Focus on like what you really have an interest in doing and how you think you can make the biggest contribution to science, not necessarily, you know, your minor in Spanish. So my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Sunny, how about yourself? How did you kind of narrow down what it was you wanted to study? Did you have any different degrees or minors that you've done along the way?
I tossed around briefly the idea of doing a math minor in undergrad. I think, but I didn't finish enough classes to be able to do that. I think for me, it's been a lot of like feather in the wind type type movement. And I've basically just I feel like there's just so many things that I'm interested in that the direction that I progress in my career tends to be, okay, here's something that I think is really interesting and I want to study that more. How do I do that? So for me, it kind of went, okay, I'm really interested in physics. Okay, I'm really, really interested in how you can apply this to biology. And then like, okay, now I've like learned how to like use really big data sets. How can I like also apply that now into a social science setting? And I think what's more important besides like the name of the degrees that I have is kind of the process that I've developed along the way of learning how to ask questions and learning kind of how to learn and how to teach yourself things. That's, I think, been the most valuable part of it, besides just like the specific classes that I've taken for majors that I've done.
Gotcha. If you could snap your fingers and become an expert, so I know that you just said that there's an incredible journey and that the journey is better maybe than the destination. But if you could snap your fingers and acquire another set of expertise, maybe in a tangential or a completely different field, what would that be?
Right now, it would be virology, and I would be making a vaccine so I could leave my house.
That sounds good. I think we could all do with that. David, how about yourself?
Sort of medicine was the first thing that came to mind for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I had joked that, so I just earned my PhD in February. And I had joked that I wasn't expecting to be the wrong kind of doctor so quickly. Like I thought I was going to have a bit more of a buffer. So yeah, medicine would be great.
I'll have to go a different direction. I think it would be super cool to like a astrobiology like botanist. I'd love to be the person that figures out how to effectively grow plants on the moon or something. So something completely, hopefully not useful in the next 10 minutes, but dang, it sounds interesting.
Well, 2024 will be, there'll be some more astronauts back on the moon. I'm excited. I don't wonder what they'll be eating. I just saw recently that they've been eating they bake cookies in space, but they didn't eat them. It was purely experimental, which just sounds torturous.
You just have to be there with that smell. It's like a psychological
Yeah, we're sending you up to the ISS with cookies. You're going to bake them, but it's just going to be for science. So I don't know how that came to be. So could you show us something science related, or even just something? I know a lot of folks have been working from home. I'm working from my bedroom right now. I've got a weird light set up ahead of me. Have you taken any of your science home? And if not, is there anything that you've been doing while you're at home, while you're in quarantine, that you've been enjoying? A good book, a show, some pets? Is there anything, a little show and tell? Is there anything that anyone's been enjoying recently that you'd like to share or tell us about?
This isn't a recent thing, but Ashlee, since you're into water purification, I have this super cool, have you seen these? It's a braille water filter and it's amazing. You like push it's basically like a French press, but for purified water, and you just push the plunger down and the top gets the purified water and the bottom is the dirty water, and you can actually drink out of it and everything.
Is that something like you could take like camping, like in like really like shoddy water that you'd normally have to treat? That would work on that?
Yeah. This thing is amazing. It captures all sorts of crazy stuff. And
Nice.
we bought this because for our honeymoon we were going. I just got married last June, and for our honeymoon we were gonna trek around Southeast Asia. Thank you. And we didn't want to buy a bunch of plastic water bottles because we try to be conscientious about our single-use plastic usage. So we were like, let's buy this, and we just used this the whole time, and it was amazing.
Cool. I would love to test that filter.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Tell me what you discover. I'm super curious about it. Sorry, that was more like an advertisement.
What was the name of the company?
Rail, you should see if Pacific Science Center can get some money from
They're
that.
local, aren't they? Am I right in thinking that's a local Seattle company?
They might be. I'm actually not sure where they're made.
I believe they are. I could be wrong. Ashlee, has there been any work that you've been taking home, or anything that you've been particularly enjoying while you've been in quarantine?
Yeah, unfortunately, like work-wise, it's been 99% teaching related stuff and then background. But we did talk about this earlier. So I walked 6 feet to the shelf in my bedroom, and I have all sorts of good nerdy insect. These aren't even things I use in my research, but I have an aspirator. This is how you found and you suck up insects. I have a spreader. This is what you take things like moths and butterflies, and that's how. Yes, I do have insects in my bedroom. This is how you get them nice and perfectly flat. You put them in a little spreader and pin them out. And
Wait,
yeah,
so you find these insects and then pin them?
Yep.
Or, okay. So where was that, a moth that was in your room?
No, this is actually from outdoors. This little guy was found, I think, in the stairwell. Just looking to see if I can see. I have a microscope out in the living room. See if I can see anything. I haven't been in the Pacific Northwest for too long, so trying to acquaint myself better with some of the microfauna that are around us. So that's kind of the closest thing I've been doing to lab work since we've been locked down.
Those look very cool.
How about you, David? Please make me feel normal.
Well, I've got mine here. I've got my. I think this is a beetle from Thailand. Campostomus gemma. I think it kind of, you can't quite see on the screen, but it has this kind of like iridescent, metallic greenish look. A lot of beetles, that's quite common. But yeah, I don't know. My girlfriend doesn't like it, but I've got it. David, how about yourself? Is there anything that you've been enjoying?
Yeah, I guess nothing that's sort of related to my work. So I do a lot of bench chemistry, so we cannot bring those chemicals and reagents into our homes. But I guess before I was a chemist, I was actually a professional yo-yo player.
What?
Yeah, so I always have one kind of laying around.
You didn't mention that when asked what your first job was.
That's fair, I guess. Never really been paid, but I've gotten some, some free stuff over the years, which is fun. But I always keep one around because over the years, I think I started back in 2005. And so I just like to have my hands busy when I'm thinking about stuff. And actually, like when I'm in the office, before all of this, and I needed to brainstorm, I would just sort of yo-yo in the office while thinking about chemistry. So,
do you realize an invitation for a demonstration?
yes, I did. I did realize this.
Yes.
If you give me 1 second, hopefully my apartment's not too dirty. Alrighty.
Ooh, nice bikes.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
That is for real.
What?
We're good. Ta-da!
Oh wow.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Bravo. So we're running out of time, David. That's incredible.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You can't end on a better note than that.
I know. Yeah, should we just end on that? That was amazing. Just very briefly, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, you've all been part of the Science Communication Fellowship Program for a while now, and you've been to the Science Center a few times. Can you share maybe one of your fondest PacSci memories? If you've got one, I don't know who to start with.
Definitely, I can start. I got married here in Seattle. I had my wedding photos done at the Science Center, and they're absolutely fantastic. I was so excited to be in front of the dinosaurs and in front of that giant double helix in the courtyard. Yeah. We by far, everybody who sees our pictures thinks we have the coolest wedding photos that they've seen, outside of like the people who do crazy things on Everest. But yeah, I have like every time I walk into the courtyard now, it has this like, I remember surprising my husband on the little bridge because he hadn't seen me before that. And walking up to him in my big poofy white dress and surprising him. So like that, the Science Center is always going to hold a special place in my heart.
Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. David, can you top that?
I don't think I can top. I don't think I can top that, but I will say, I guess I have two things that really stand out. And I guess they're not even that specific, but one is like, as a science communication fellow, every now and then you have like that one kid that's super engaged and really excited. And so, that always is really fun and like sort of like makes you feel good about yourself, about like being contributing to the community and whatnot. So that's always been great. And then two is whenever I'm down in, I guess the Queen Anne area, I'll often like grab coffee with a friend at La Marzocco. And it's always been sort of fun to be like, hey, I volunteer at the Science Center and we can like go in because I'm a member. And, you get your coffee and you like walk around and you like hang out in the butterfly room. And it's always been a really fun way to spend, an hour or two while you're down there. So the Science Center is great. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, thank you. We love what everyone does, communicating science and for folks who come to the Science Center, no matter what age or stage they're at, to meet real professional working scientists like yourself is a real treat. And so that's awesome that you appreciate it as much as everyone else does. And the butterfly room is great, especially on a rainy day. We're having some lovely weather now, but well, any time of the day, the butterfly exhibit is always fun. But that's beautiful. How about yourself, Sunny?
Well, these stories have kind of reminded me that I guess one of the things that I will always remember about the Pacific Science Center is that I used those guest passes from volunteering for one of my friends who was going on a first date, and so they had their first date in the butterfly room, and they actually just recently got married in October, so it was a very successful first date in the butterfly room. I was not there, so I don't remember it personally, but it sounded great. I think personally, and then I always the few times that I've been able to do the Meet a Scientist events in person, it's always really fun to interact with people and get their perspective on the questions I have about the work that I do. And I guess I'm going to have to come up with a new exhibit now that I've changed jobs. But
well, we look forward to seeing that. Big thank you to everybody who has been watching from home, submitting their questions and meeting the scientists. We hope you've had as much fun watching and participating as we have. Again, we'll be doing these on Thursdays at the same time at 1 p.m. with more science communication fellows. So thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you to our 3 scientists today. You've all been superb. So thank you for that. And we will see everybody again soon. So bye for now. Thanks.
Thank you.